Hi, this is Justin. I'm just checking the audio. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Right. Hey, everybody, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. And are we, Matt, are we going, so we're doing social media on this live, right? We're doing social media live on this? Okay, so when is that gonna go live? When we start the committee meeting? You guys got that, tech folks? Who's managing that part? Okay, I see AV Tech, but they're not saying.
Yes, we're live.
Okay, you're live right now?
Yes, we are live.
They're already live. Okay. Well, I guess we're already live. And I see, so let's go ahead and get started. I know the mayor's gonna join us. He's not quite ready yet. So we'll go ahead and open up the Federal Legislative Committee meeting. Today is Thursday, March 11th. And let's start with roll call.
Councilwoman Sorrow. Vice Chair Supernaw.
Here.
Chair Richardson.
I am here. Fantastic. All right. So we're before we get to the items du jour, the the Federal Recovery Long Beach Rescue Recovery Act. I think we can go ahead and take care of the minutes quickly. And so let's go ahead and hear item number 1, the minutes.
Item 1 is a recommendation to approve the minutes for the Federal Legislation Committee meeting held Monday, August 31st, 2020.
All right. Now we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from August 31st.
Supernaw will make the motion.
All right. Thank you, council member.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Sorrow. Okay, and let's go ahead and cast our votes. Is there any public comment on the minutes, actually?
No public comment, Chair.
Okay, all right. And so we'll go ahead and cast our votes on item 1.
Councilwoman Sorrow.
Aye.
Vice Chair Supernaw.
Aye.
Chair Richardson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, great. And I'm just waiting on a signal from the mayor is ready. And so I think we can go ahead and do a brief presentation on item number 2, please. Oh, looks like we have the mayor. So let's go to the item du jour. Thank you. So we'll take up item number 3, the Federal Legislative, actually the Long Beach Recovery Act. So let's go ahead and go to item number 3, please. Wait, is that item 3? Actually, that's not item 3. That is item 4. Let's take item 4, please.
Recovery Act, Chair, is item 5. Do you want item 5?
Well, let's take item 5, please.
Okay. Item 5 is a recommendation to receive and file a presentation on the Long Beach Recovery Act proposal.
Fantastic. And what we'll do is, as a matter of process, everyone's heard already that there's an ongoing conversation in the federal government here in Long Beach about our recovery. This is a federal program. It's a federal grant, and we are taking this up in our Federal Legislative Committee. It is what we are asked to do. We have invited our Long Beach Mayor, Robert Garcia, who's been incredibly involved in our federal advocacy efforts with the White House and with Congress to ensure that Long Beach has the resources that we need to recover. And so without further ado, welcome to the Federal Legislative Committee Town Hall, Mayor Garcia.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Vice Mayor Richardson. And it's, of course, good to see the other committee members. I see both Councilmember Daryl Supernaw and Councilwoman Sulisaro, and of course the city team as well. I know you're going to have a presentation, more of an overview and some details from city manager, probably in just a few minutes, I imagine. But I also wanted to thank you all for having this really update and conversation around what's in the federal bill and how we're going to spend the bill and what our proposal is. And then also I do have a couple announcements also to make as far as some good news, which we think is going to even add to the work that's happening. So a couple things just to go broadly. So what the Long Beach Recovery Act is it's a more than $207 million plan to really get Long Beach pre-pandemic and to even bounce back even better than from where we were before. It's the single largest investment into Long Beach from a legislative perspective on programs and support that the city's probably seen in decades from Congress. The president did sign the bill today, so it is the law and it is locked in. We've been working since even before the administration took office to give input to the White House and to the transition team on what the actual recovery bill should look like. And at the centerpiece of that, us as mayors have been advocating for direct allocation to cities and kind of how important that piece really is. So we've been able to do a lot, and we're really proud of the plan. We just presented it earlier this week on Monday, and it's been received very well. We're very happy and excited to share more, and also for the committee to hear any feedback about the plan. So I'm going to be a little broad. Broadly speaking, the plan really is divided into three groups. There is the economic recovery piece, which is at about 51 million. Then there is the healthy city piece, and it's really the healthy and safe city piece. And that is another piece of the recovery plan as well. That's at about 72 million. And then the last piece is the securing the city's future piece, and that's about 83 million. So what do those buckets do? Bucket one, which is the economic recovery, is really the work of the Economic Development Committee of the City Council and the broader council that they initiated with our support, of course, back at the end of last year. And so there have been 20 roundtables. Vice Mayor Richardson, I think you brought this forward to the council with some of your colleagues. And there was a whole process that involved about 20 roundtables, nonprofit leaders, community organizations, businesses, bids, that all got together and put together recommendations that were part of this economic recovery strategy. The economic recovery piece of the Long Beach Recovery Act is $51 million to small businesses, to economic inclusion, to money to clean the city so they can get back to really having a very nice street sweeping and trash pickup and trash abatement program. And of course, money for worker programs and to ensure that we bounce back in a big way. Tourism investment, restaurants, gyms, fitness centers, all of that. That is on top of the federal money that we know for small business grants and on top of the state grants, all of which Long Beach folks have been able to tap into. So that's the economic recovery piece. The healthy and safe city piece is also really important. And that, of course, is testing and contact tracing and money for a lot of our community groups so they can go out and do health equity work and they can do community outreach work around health. There's money in there for a lot of programs as they relate to food security and basic needs. So all of those things that we know that folks are struggling in the community and across the city, all of that is in there. And I think that the health department, which was a big part of putting this section together, really listened to the community. There's money in there for mental health, childcare and early childhood education, of course, is in there. So, and 29 million for tenant assistance, which we had announced partly a little bit earlier in the year, is all part of this larger bucket of money. I want to also note that the American Relief Plan included money for homelessness to a direct allocation that's also included in this part of the plan. So we've got additional homelessness money in there. And the last piece of this section, the second section, is really about violence prevention and safety. We know that violence prevention is everyone's work. And there's really a lot of work to be done. A lot of people don't realize that violent crime has increased, not just in Long Beach, but across the country during the pandemic. And it's happening in every big American city. When you have large unemployment and young people not in school and out of work and less people on the street and many businesses closed, you create an environment where we are seeing across the country and here at home violence. And a lot of people don't know, last year during the pandemic, this country broke sales records for guns. And that's really, really disheartening. But that also leads to some of the challenges that we have as a community to bounce back from this difficult year around safety as well. And all of that is connected also to the work that we're doing on restorative justice, on criminal justice reform, on looking at institutional racism as it relates to how we make communities more safe and integrated into the city. And I think all of that work can be uplifted in this plan as well. And then the final piece of the plan is really about securing our city's future. And I can't speak enough to how important this part of the plan is. We will eliminate our furloughs in April so that employees can get back to work and delivering all the services that residents expect. We'll replenish our reserves. So now that we've depleted $48 million of our reserves, we'll put that money back so that we have our reserves ready for the next emergency or the next natural disaster. I'm proposing that we also eliminate next year's structural deficit. We don't want to spend the next year spending time on arguing about what we're going to cut and what services are going to be eliminated from our libraries or our parks. We want to spend time building back better and recovering our economy. So that's also in the proposal and a really important part. Also for our employees, so that they have the security to know that we're moving forward, really just focus on recovery. So that's the overall plan. I think Tom's going to get into some line items about what's in it. I'll just have one more announcement, which I think is really exciting. I think that the city manager probably just put some, let the council know here probably in the last 30 minutes or an hour. As we've been building the Recovery Act, we've always taken a kind of conservative number of how much the city was going to receive. And so the $207 million plan initially was $150 million, and then it just grew and it kept growing and growing. And so I'm really excited to announce that we have, as part of the Recovery Act, we have now, in addition to it, we have an additional $27 million in the Long Beach Recovery Act plan into two buckets. That now that the bill is in there, we have that full number. There's an additional $12 million in the direct allocation to the city, and an additional $15 million that goes directly to the Long Beach Airport. And so the airport money will go to ensure that the airport is able to meet its needs as it grows and bounces back through a difficult year for airport. And the $12 million, and the $15 million for the airport has to go to the airport. The $12 million is something that will go to the council next week to review and to put in place. And so on top of the proposal that we put forward, there's this additional $12 million. And what's exciting is I think the council's got a lot of ideas about how we look at those resources. And I think whether it's conversations around the needs in our libraries, which we discussed a few weeks ago. Vice Mayor Richardson, you've been talking a lot about down payments for mortgages and for homeowners, right, to get their down payment assistance in place. There's additional needs around childcare, guaranteed income. Well, I think we're all, I think, big proponents of guaranteed income programs. So there's a lot of opportunity and need, and I think you're going to hear from the community as well. But I'm looking forward to hearing, and I look forward to the council kind of putting this 12 million to work next week and adding it to the plan. So we're excited about that. I want to make sure I let the committee know. You've already been notified, I think, by the city manager in the last hour or so. But that is very good news, and it's always best to be a little bit conservative in your estimate so that you're not overspending, but now we have more resources. So again, an additional $12 million for direct allocation for the city and an additional $15 million for our airport. So this plan just grew in size, and we're very excited and grateful to the White House for signing the bill today.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor Garcia. It's an incredible moment. This effort that you've played an incredible role in helping secure our city's future by placing so much time in advocating here. And it's been a big regional effort. A lot of mayors, I wrote a letter as President Skaggs. We're all focused on this. And what's good is, and you mentioned it, we're really being balanced. You're thinking about the economic recovery, all the work associated there. City began with months ago. You're talking about health and the status of the people of our community. And that's a big area of focus. And then you're talking about securing our financial future as a city. So I think you got it right in terms of those categories. And the council will pick up the ball, and I think we will deliver based on that framework. We'll make some adjustments, but we'll deliver a plan that Long Beach can count on. So thank you so much for joining us, Mayor Garcia, and we will jump right into the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks a lot. All right. So to give our presentation on this, we have our city manager, Tom Modica. Tom, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. We don't see you on video, Tom.
I'm in the chambers to do the presentation,
okay.
so you'll hear me, but
Okay.
and you'll see our presentation.
All right. So Tom, I think we can go ahead and get started. And for the sake of time, and I hear we have a lot of public comment, we'll try to make this presentation around 20 minutes. How's that sound?
Yes, sir. Got it.
Thank you. Well, go ahead and proceed. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. It's really a pleasure to be here today to talk about a product that the staff has put a ton of work into to really deliver you a proposed recovery plan that we believe meets a lot of the priorities that we've heard from you, from the community, and something that you can really work with next Wednesday or next Tuesday to come up with a plan that the council can adopt and we can move forward. So the mayor did an excellent job of really overview of where we are and what this plan does. So in those areas, I'll try to summarize less and get more into the details so that we can really present this to you. I do want to start with where we've been with COVID. Think about it. In a year, we went from not even knowing what a COVID test was to daily testing capacity of up to 5,000 people. We've done more than 722,000 tests. Our hospitalizations, which had spiked in the winter months, are down 86% since the peak of the winter surge. And our positivity rate is one of the lowest we've ever had at 2.3%, which is solidly in the orange. But just a couple months ago, or even a couple weeks ago, we were as high as 17.4%. Vaccination has been an incredible process. I'm just so proud of our team. Long Beach and our partners have done 140,000 vaccine doses administered citywide. We've done 68% of all seniors have been vaccinated with at least their first shot, and many of them now have their second. We were also a leader in every time the state allowed us to open up, we were opening up first before anybody else because we had gone through our major categories so quickly. So we were the first with food workers, first with educators. All of our educators and school staff are vaccinated and they can start opening pretty soon. We were also the first to vaccinate people with disabilities, and we're announcing that we're moving on to do people with underlying health conditions and a number of other categories as of today or as of tomorrow. And so the work on the recovery plan, though, really started with the council. On December 15th, we were asked to do a incredibly robust economic recovery strategy. And so this was based on 5 economic equity studies, using real economic data through our economic development department and all of their partners, and really leveraging the CARES Act funding we had to help get us some really good data about how to recover. We went out to the community in an intense effort over 2 months to do 30 different community listening sessions. 350 community leaders and representatives all gave input. And the council's Economic Development and Finance Committee really spent a lot of time on this as well, and thinking and guiding and giving some input as well into the proposed plan. And so what did we hear when we were out in the community? We heard a number of things. We heard how important it is for service sector workers to be vaccinated, how important public health and safety is to not only public health and safety, but to economics and to economic recovery. We know how valuable our community-based partnerships are. The community asked us to restore trust in all these changing rules that happen every single week for a while, and nobody knew which way to go in terms of as we managed through the health orders. And so, getting a trust capability of knowing that they can be open and what that future is going to look like. We know our tenant and property owners need a lot of assistance as people are renting and don't have money to pay rent. We know that there's a need for needs-based decision-making where we're really focusing on data on what is needed in the community and then making our investment there. Businesses need revenue in order to survive and in order to thrive, and generating that revenue is incredibly important. As we get a lot of federal dollars and the city is a huge organization, how do we become inclusive and more inclusive in our procurement to fund those that really can benefit from our procurement? How do we cut red tape and make sure we're being very efficient? And we've done a lot of planning in the past, from racial equity to everyone in. How do we incorporate all those past plans and build on that great work? One of the things I want to really focus on before we talk about the plan is that we are grounded in equity. Every piece of this plan has been through an equity lens. You'll see that influence throughout the plan. And we're really trying to address historic economic and health inequities that have gotten even worse during COVID-19. We want to focus resources on the area of the community that have been most impacted, and some of our disadvantaged communities have seen incredible hospitalizations and death and loss of family members at rates much higher than more of our affluent areas. We want to protect public health and relaunch our service sector economy. We want to create this prosperous and resilient and inclusive Long Beach local economy for everybody. And of course, build on that economic foundation for this next, hopefully, big wave of optimism and hope as we build our economy and we can compete in the modern economy. Key to that, too, is language access. You will not see one little section that says language access. There's no single bullet point, and that's because it's important that language access is in everything we do. So in every program, there are components where we are able to speak in the language people feel most comfortable with, to communicate to them and to hear them as they speak in their own languages. And so that's built in every single section. You'll see as you read the narratives, we'll talk about Khmer speakers and Spanish speakers and outreach and working with community organizations that really focus on the various groups in our city. And so it is foundational to our plan. So the funding amount, you heard the mayor talk about both the $207 million number, and now it's a $234 million number once we add in the two components that we just spoke about. And so what are those funding sources? We have $178 million estimated from what's called the American Rescue Plan Act. And so that's $153 million in that flexible city funding. As we were finalizing this plan over the weekend, we heard a couple different numbers. There were amendments being taken, and so we programmed what we thought was sure and secure, which was the $141 million. And just recently, we got the latest updates, and it looks like that number is now $153 million. And so there is that additional $12 million that will be available. We also have a dedicated tranche of $10 million that can be only used for homeless services and prevention, and the dedicated $15 million approximately for Long Beach Airport operations and debt service. So what can we use this money for? It's fairly flexible, but it's not infinitely flexible. There are definitely still constraints on it. And what's important is that we don't know what all those will be until we see the final regulations. But what's in the bill? We can respond to the emergency and address its economic impacts. We can respond to workers performing essential work. We can provide government services that are affected by revenue reduction from COVID-19. And you can make some investments in infrastructure, but it's limited to water, sewer, and broadband. And so it'll come in two different tranches, 50% within the first 60 days of enactment, and then 50% 12 months later. And it all has to be spent by December 31st, 2024, excuse me. So that extra $12 million, that is in a memo to you now, and it's being added into Legistar so that everybody has it. I did not specifically program it into buckets, but we did give you, or into programs. We wanted to give you some guidance. Some of the things we could do is add to the city's reserves. We'll talk next week a little bit about some of our other outstanding liabilities, including Measure M. We still have needed in the current budget year for COVID-related expenses that aren't fully funded, so that could be an area. You could enhance any of the programs that I've proposed to you. You could create new programs in the proposed plan, and you could also fund any of those authorized uses that are outlined in the plan, in the Recovery Act. Another funding source is tenant assistance. We got $29 million to us, and about $14 million of that comes from federal government, about $15 million comes from the state. And the council has agreed to do that program here locally, and we'll talk about how that fits into our greater plan. We also negotiated with LA County because we're a health jurisdiction. We get a portion of the money that comes to them for what's called epidemiology and laboratory capacity. This is how the health department does all of its testing, all of its tracking, all of its data collection, and really supports the data units that has to do with identifying COVID-19 and responding to it. And so we were able to negotiate $27 million and incredibly thankful for their partnership. So the mayor talked about these 3 buckets. So the first is economic recovery. Unemployment is right now at 12.1%. It had reached, we think, as high as 30% for a brief point of time. And again, that was up from 4%, which was our historical low. And it's had an unequal impact on low-income workers and business workers in the service sectors. And so we have to make sure that we're addressing those economic inequities as we address the plan. These are 5 big categories under economic recovery, and I'll spend a little bit more time going into each one. And so first, we want to make sure, and we heard this from the community, in order for them to be profitable and in order for them to recover, they need to make sure that COVID is under control. And so we have funding to support free COVID testing, contact tracing. We can go out to businesses and sites. We can do investigations and do the epidemiological work to support them. The vast majority of the money in this category goes directly to businesses. That was one of the big things we heard from the community. And so we've got direct relief funding, for example, for restaurants and bars and breweries at $5 million. Personal services sector is going to have $5 million worth of grants as well. Our nonprofits have direct grants coming to them in addition to all the investment that we want them to work on and help us with COVID response. And those grants are about $3 million. Before I go even farther, there's a lot of detail in the plan. There's both a narrative description for each of these categories, which I encourage you to look at, and there's a chart that kind of lays out some of the big funding buckets. And I'll just give you some examples. We're also going to have fee waivers, and we know that city fees sometimes can be something hard to pay for when you haven't earned money back yet, and so there's $3.5 million for that. Our bids will be invested in at about $2 million. Our other support organizations will also be able to receive grants to be able to do property activation and support those types of businesses. We also want to make sure that we do visitor attraction and bring back people to our city, and there's $1.25 million in there to restart those efforts. The next category is economic inclusion. We want to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind as we build our economy. And so one of the big areas is digital divide. We know that so much has gone online and so many people need those resources. And so we have $2 million set aside for both resident and commercial sectors. We're going to create citywide business councils and create all these opportunities for our diverse entrepreneurs. We want to look at our inclusive procurement strategies and fund some studies and some action around how do we make sure that when the city spends money, we're helping as much as we possibly can. We also have service worker and customer service protection programs for workers so that we can help them with PPE. We can help them with distribution and outreach and vaccination registration. We want to fund a youth workforce program development in the amount of $1 million. We also want to create economic empowerment zones where we have specific funding for areas that are identified that are the most in need to create economic activity, which could be really creative ideas that will be worked on in the year to come. We also know that we've been impacted very heavily by trash in our city and debris. It's been a result of less ability to get out and clean, but also a lot more trash generation by everybody in the community. And so we're spending or proposing $5 million to significantly increase our dumped items, collection crews, special corridor or special collection programs. We're going to be going up and down our business corridors. This has to do with everything from litter abatement to dumped items to also addressing some of the impacts of homelessness in our community. And we also know that our state and county partners have really struggled on the LA River and the freeways, and we want to be able to have resources to help them get back on their feet. And businesses need technical assistance. So we also want to make sure that we're there to help them when they don't know what programs are out there or how they can access all these great resources, that we have actual staff that can talk to them in multiple different languages. And also to provide that technical assistance not only to businesses but to nonprofits and displaced workers, and also fund some studies to make sure that our investments are really taking hold and are based in science and data. The next category is healthy and safe community. So before we talk about the money, I just want to talk about the impact. We know that COVID-19 has hit our diverse community much, much harder than our affluent community, than our white community. And the numbers tell the story. The largest impact by far, even though it's a very small portion of our community, population of our community, is Pacific Islanders. But if you look at Hispanic and Latino and Black and Asian, every single category has had more impacts, more cases, more hospitalizations and death. In Latinos, it's 2.7 times the cases, 3.3 times the hospitalizations, and 2.9 times the death. And you'll see that for all the various groups here. And so we know that we need to really focus our resources on the people that need it the most. And so at Healthy and Safety Community, these are the categories, and I'll get into the details in a second. And so again, on the residential side for health and safety, we also need to provide those that epidemiological support where we're doing testing and contact tracing and education and funding nonprofits to do outreach through language access. These funds, unfortunately, cannot be used at this time for vaccine, but they can definitely be used to track COVID and do all the free testing. We know that basic needs has been a huge area that we hadn't had to really fund before. Things like food, things like, basic people you can call and say, what are all the resources, the mental health resources, food resources, resources for our seniors. And so we have dedicated staff right now that are running these programs. And so $1.7 million will go to keep all those infrastructure in place. $4 million will be for food security, where we're really working on areas that are food deserts or have even had closure of grocery stores. We're also going to be doing housing support and right to counsel programs to make sure people can stay in their homes and have the access to legal services. And we're going to support our older adults, $800,000 for everything from senior center programming to community-based organizations who work with social isolation and mental health and physical health needs. The next category we call physical and mental health equity, and it's $5.3 million. The biggest portion of this is a health equity fund, $4 million to directly fund community-based organizations to advance physical and mental health services, to help us with COVID outreach, to get over vaccine hesitancy, to connect people with vaccine opportunities and connection to food resources. This goes, all the way down to making sure that when we offer food programs, we're offering it the right foods that people feel are appropriate for their community, and it is something that the community wants when we provide food to our community. We also want to create a promotora and community health worker program, which works hand in hand with those health equity grants to get out into hard-to-reach communities, and provide mental health awareness services as well. Childcare is an incredibly important part of our of what we've seen out in the community, and it helps people get back to work. We want to renovate our West facility in the health department to create 28 new slots. We want to provide additional developmental and emergency supplies for families in need, and also help with some of our early childhood education programs in our libraries. As the mayor mentioned, violence has significantly increased during COVID, especially shootings, and our police department is on it, and they're out in the community, and they're doing the work that a police department does, and we also need to support them through finding opportunities other than violence that our youth and our children have. And so we're looking at creating programming in parks and teen centers, offering the youth safe and developmentally appropriately places to engage in those activities. These could be things like funding our Be Safe programs or midnight basketball or even a modified police athletic league. We're looking at libraries, about $900,000 in library programming, about a healthy or a re-entry pilot program to work with people who are coming out of prison and get them into the right programs to make sure that there's not recidivism for $600,000. And really building on a great program in Washington Middle School called Community Intervention and doing that throughout the city. Homelessness is a huge area of focus as well. $12 million dedicated to this, where we can actually set up tiny homes, 50 modular units at the multi-service center. We want to get money to be able to find all these partnerships if we have land or if we can use parking lots and convert them and do safe parking and all those great programs or additional hotels. We want to have more motel vouchers for clients at the MSC. We want to increase our MSC, so we have 2 mobile MSCs. Those are our multi-service center that can go out into the community and hire 6 outreach workers and 4 case managers. Also bring mobile showers and restrooms to people in need, and then help connect them to services. and also create some flexible housing. So there's a big gap between people who have interim shelter and those that get, for example, into our Section 8 program, and be able to create bridges between that. We've talked about this a lot, our tenant assistance program, so $29 million, the biggest tenant assistance program we've ever had, and that's going to help pay 80% of past due rent to the landlord. We can also provide 25% of up to 3 months of future rent. We can also pay and help people pay their utility payments to get them back current again. And so the last category, and we'll wrap up in about 2-3 minutes, is securing our city's future. And so we know that this is COVID has caused severe impacts to our budget. We ended just in the general fund alone in 1 year in FY20, $21 million shortfall. We've drawn down on emergency reserves. We've had to cut our budgets. We've had to do staff furloughs. We also needed to have reserves to balance our FY21 budget. And so all in all, it's been about $48 million in replenishing reserves, and that is funded in this plan. We also want to maintain services for residents and businesses and not have to cut further. And so we want to use $30 million to balance the FY22 budget, so we get a year to try to recover before we have to really address the budget structurally, and hopefully the economy will help to recover during that time. We also want to eliminate and propose to eliminate staff furloughs, and we're in the meet and confer process on that right now, so that our employees who sacrifice can come back to work and help increase those service levels. So I do want to talk about some other funding. We know that the American Rescue Plan has a lot of different areas funded. For example, vaccines, there'll be $16 billion in grants, so we are going to get some vaccine money, we believe. There's also other programs like tenant and homeowner assistance. There's homeowner assistance of $10 billion to prevent mortgage defaults. There's emergency housing choice vouchers. So we're going to go through every section in the bill and make sure that we're getting everything we can. We also know there's going to be a second plan, which is called the Build Back Better plan, which is really going to focus on infrastructure. So we're already looking at those shovel-ready projects and how we can apply and getting ready so that we can get infrastructure into our city and both create jobs and improve our infrastructure. And so the next steps, we're here today to really give you an overview and receive public comment, and then we'll be in front of the council on March 16th. And this is really your plan to adopt on the 16th and make sure that it meets all of your needs. So the last thing I'll say is next steps. You'll see that what we provided you is a plan. It's a proposed plan. It's not a budget. We did not get to the point of every single dollar programmed and staff and administrative. That comes after the council really blesses the overall policy direction that you want us to fund. And then we'll go through and create those program budgets, how much administrative support, our outreach plans, and create grant application processes. This is going to be an incredible undertaking on a staff that is honestly, very, very busy with a lot of priorities. So we are going to have to focus and really make this something that takes top priority with priority staff resources. I strongly encourage you to wait for official guidance before we start spending this money, because we don't know everything, if everything we've proposed is going to meet every regulation. And there are some potential risk areas. So we need to know whether or not the restoration of reserves and services is an allowable expense. It appears to be, but that will come out in the regulations. And also, what if some of these proposals that we have, these great ideas, are or are not supported by the regulations? We need to make sure that that happens as well. So that's our staff report. We have a lot more information in the actual written report, and we're available to answer questions as well. And thank you for the opportunity to present, and we're so excited about this opportunity.
All right. Well, thank you so much, City Manager. We're going to take some brief questions from the council members. We want to reserve the majority of the time for public comment. We're structuring this town hall style. Just a few, I'll start, give a few remarks. And then we'll go through, who's the vice chair of the committee? Is it Dr. Sorrow? Okay. So then we'll go vice chair, and then we'll go member Supernaw. And so just a few things. City Manager,
Vice Chair Supernaw.
Oh,
Supernaw,
okay.
Vice Chair.
Okay, great. I'll go in that order. Thank you. So I think it's great that you emphasize the limitations that may take place. It's important that we set the expectations, we manage the expectations with the public. On CARES Act, there were expectations set that things would move quickly, but there were so many rules on the funding that it created a lot of frustration. Also, we weren't directly funded with CARES Act initially, and it took time. We were one of the later cities to receive funding. And so I think it's important that we really manage our expectation, measure our expectation. Second thing I'll say is, with all of it, I like the approach. I think it's a good foundation to start. Council will make some adjustments, but I think you've covered, for the most part, the key areas that are there. Now, I think we should be thinking about the recovery period over a 2-year period of time. So as we fund things, these programs, we really should be thinking about dividing those funds, the ones that are being deployed, into batches or phases. So it isn't really all deployed out at once, but we can sort of sustain some of this through the recovery. I also think that we need to make sure that everything we do is in service to a strategy or a plan. A lot of what you've presented, you can reference in a violence prevention plan, the Racial Equity Reconciliation Initiative. All of these have significant outreach. They're not new ideas. Their strategies have been worked on, and I think that's really important. A few things that I want to just lift up myself and sort of prioritize first is this concept of collective impact. A lot of those strategies and funding categories overlap within communities. You mentioned some communities, have food deserts, and then you have violence overlapped in some of those communities. The need for youth to invest in youth, economic empowerment in some of those communities. You've got digital issues, health equity access, all of them these issues. And I think about this as, the way I'm thinking about this is, what we don't want is a bunch of separate strategies that don't speak to each other, but rather one collective impact model that says, hey, and I'll use my community as an example. I'm not interested in a bunch of separate strategies in North Long Beach. North Long Beach was heading in the right direction and the pandemic hit. We need to make sure this funding is in service to that trajectory North Long Beach was on before, so we're recovering. We need to think about having coordinators in these key areas, making sure these different categories of funding are coordinated. We need to make sure we're thinking about lead agencies and how these strategies speak to one another. Because I'll tell you, if someone is having an issue with rental assistance, they're probably food insecure as well, right? They're probably dealing with other issues as well. And so we want to make sure there's some collective impact strategy. The other thing I will say is, I think there are some areas, and we'll hear from the public, there are some areas where, we can probably make a deeper commitment. And one is housing. I'd love to see a more significant commitment to, and the mayor mentioned it, in our reconciliation plan. We've talked about this for some time. In the reconciliation plan, goal 4.3G, it talks about the need for home ownership and down payment assistance. It also talks about, in goal 4.1D, it talks about housing land trusts. And the community has talked about, for the last 2 years in the budget, a rental housing division. So I'd love to see on a 2-year period, how we can invest in a number of positions over a 2-year period through the course of the recovery, how we can invest in a rental housing division, and align that with working with a nonprofit to establish a community land trust and invest in that, and invest seed funding into down payment assistance, particularly in the areas where the data is showing us that you see renters are not able to become homeowners, or people who rent in that neighborhood can't afford to buy in that neighborhood. I'd love to see, just as a category, those housing things be more present and reflected within this presentation. I also know that in our reconciliation plan, we talked a lot about the Cannabis Equity Program. In fact, it's goal 4, section 6A, B, and C, all talk about cannabis equity. It's not an easy problem. What we've seen is, if you're unemployed or you're somebody living in North Central and West Long Beach and you're impacted by the war on drugs, it's very difficult to build the knowledge base and have the resources to be successful. And so I'd love to see a commitment to funding a pipeline program that takes folks, gets them prepared, and somehow has a relationship to the policy we're crafting around deliveries and brick and mortar, to where there's a relationship there. So we're helping cultivate these leaders and connect them directly there. And that's something that I'm going to be advocating for here. I see that you mentioned a lot of resources around beautification and cleaning up. I think we need to hire local artists to touch up our murals. It's a lot of tagging all over town. We need to get out and make our city beautiful. So I want to make sure within those resources, murals and all those things are there. I love that the community has lifted up some conversations around the immigrant community. And we have a significant immigrant community and undocumented community within our city, and they are not eligible for a lot of resources currently. And I think we need to do something for our immigrant communities and make sure we set aside some resources there. The mayor mentioned a few things. The mayor mentioned potential childcare programs. That's great. He mentioned basic income. I'd love to see basic income for displaced workers in like our hospitality industry, for example. That should be a part of our recovery strategy. We want the hotels back open. But in the meantime, if we're doing basic income, let's look at impacted workers within our city. I think there's a recommendation on libraries. I think it's 4.3G on within the reconciliation plan. It talks about investing in library equity. And so that's something I also like to see. So those are some high level things that I think can be strengthened. And I think between now and Tuesday, we'll probably hear more from the council, but those are things I'm going to be looking to see that are reflected within this plan. And so those are some of my comments, and I don't have any questions, Mr. City Manager. So I'll go to Councilmember Supernaw, Vice Chair Supernaw, rather.
Thank you, Chair Richardson. First of all, I just like to reiterate what the chair mentioned earlier. It seems like a long time ago. We've had a lot of information, but just to reiterate our thanks to Mayor Garcia for his advocacy. It's just, he hit it out of the park. And this discussion today wouldn't be so robust were it not for his incredible efforts. I'm really here today to listen. And I guess, I'll just limit this to a question for Tom Modica. And I don't want to hold you to a date, but you'd mentioned those regulations that'll be pretty important moving forward on these monies coming in. Rather than try to hold you to a date, just that I hope that you understand that the committee feels that getting that information to us or getting it to the public or all the stakeholders ASAP is critical. So I'll just leave it at that.
Absolutely. So we expect a check within 60 days, and they don't normally provide money without telling you how you can spend it. So hopefully within 60 days, we'll have both the regulations, we can give it to you, and we can receive our first tranche of money.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next we have Councilmember Sorrow.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And I also want to reiterate my gratitude to our mayor's leadership on our recovery plan, in addition to staff's hard work in translating this into ways that we can pretty much hit the ground running to implement or at least break it down. And I appreciate Vice Mayor Richardson laying out kind of the overarching kind of points about this plan. And I also want to just add to how much I appreciate the equity lens taken, in how this plan is viewed and approached, because we know that some of the hard-hit communities have already been struggling prior to the pandemic and has worsened certainly from it. And appreciate that we're going to be investing into not just small businesses, but nonprofits to help with the efforts, and that we will make it a little easier for them to be able to access the resources to do so. The other thing I want to add to, not only do I think that we should have a collective impact, but that it should also be targeted, as I mentioned earlier, in hard-to-hit areas, and that they're coordinated so that we're not duplicating efforts, and that we're making sure we're hitting people who are really hard to reach, those who, with disabilities, to having language access. And the other thing I want to add to around home ownership is that I think it's also good to consider how we can also have people become property owners as well of business areas, especially when we want to make sure that we keep certain businesses in the city and helping them to come back and recover from the pandemic. As I know several businesses closed down in my quarters, and I really like to see them come back, or that they be replaced by, if they were a restaurant, I love them to still be a restaurant. The other thing around that the mayor touched upon, as well as the vice mayor, is around violence prevention. And particularly, I just want to make sure we lift up domestic violence prevention, because I feel that a lot of the causes of the increasing rate of violence we've been seeing are connected back to kind of that's triggered by unhealthy relationships or unhealthy ways to communicate with each other that's led to this level. And I think that it's all, again, connected back to housing, not only for those who have lost their job, but also making sure that they have safe havens to go to as well if they're in situations that's not safe and they're limited in places as well. Last thing that I want to add to strengthening relationships, not with family, but also within our neighborhood, is ensuring that we invest in our neighborhood leadership program and that we're building leaderships in our neighborhood to be able to continue to do the amazing work that we're seeing in this pandemic time, which is who's been driving these food drives, in addition to making sure we're getting people to their vaccination site or getting them in our neighborhood. So that's really important that we continue to strengthen those leadership locally to do the work that I think that city can certainly not completely cover. And just reiterate again, ensuring that we are considering funding for our immigrant communities. The needs still there. Issues of immigrant rights hasn't gone away because the pandemic's come up, as well as how do we really use this opportunity to consider land trusts as well. So those are some of my interests, as well as the library. I have so many others, but I definitely want to make sure we hear from the public. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Sorrow. Okay, so I want to ask the clerk, how much public comment do we have queued up for this item?
Chair,
we have 16.
We have a little bit over 20 people signed up for item 5.
20?
A little over 20.
Okay, we'll go 90 seconds instead of 3 minutes. How many, I know we have enough, we will need to go double time because I know we're gonna need to go double time to accommodate non-English speakers. And so I wanna make sure that we get enough time to get as many people in before the hard stop that some of the members have. So we'll go down to 90 seconds and let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, just so you know, we have additionally 3 Spanish speakers.
Great, fantastic. I think 90 seconds should be good. Thank you.
Abraham Zavala, please press *6. Your 90 seconds starts now.
Hello, my name is Abraham Zavala. I'm with Long Beach Residents Empowered. Daily, we interact with community members who are, struggling to navigate the housing landscape. Folks are struggling to find counsel. Folks are trying to figure out where to turn to in the city for support. So today, I wanted to speak on the Community Land Trust. I wanted to speak on Right to Counsel and on, funding a rental housing division. I think the best place to start is with the rental housing division, where there's folks that are staffed and knowledgeable in Right to Counsel and in Community Land Trust. Both of these issues are super key. Access to the city is super important for our communities. And I believe if we were to boost money for a Right to Counsel, that would prevent a lot of folks who are on the brink of homelessness to have their day in court and have a fair representation. I think that's super key right now, boosting that funding and having more access to counsel. And also, on the issue of community land trusts, or on the topic of that, moving away from a study that's focused on the efficacy of community land trusts and instead having a study that's focusing on how to provide technical assistance for CLT, providing community members with an additional development plan, where $500,000 is focused on allocating that technical assistance and $5 million directly for acquisition of land. CLT's work, I've seen it happen in Bow Heights with East LA Community Corporation, where street vendors participated in a very robust kind of technical assistance plan to have those initial steps taken forward in that community land trust. There's many land trusts in Southern California, 7, 200 across the U.S., but 7 in Southern California, and Long Beach deserves to have one as well.
Thank you.
Be part.
Elise Hansen, please press *6. Your 90 seconds starts now.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Elise Hansen, and I'm a student at Cal State Long Beach. I'm asking this committee to support the following recommendations by community members that were not included in the proposed recovery plan, which includes the creation of a rental housing division, the full funding of the Right to Counsel program, and specific funding set aside for the creation of community land trusts in Long Beach. I'm also asking this committee to consider a moratorium on hosted/unhosted short-term rentals, This would help to protect our housing stock and also putting our vulnerable workers first. As tourism comes back, allowing short-term rentals to operate will chip away at the vital recovery of hotel workers and their return to their jobs and the city's much-needed tax revenue. This is a moment for bold action, and I'm asking that you consider the above request and recommend a moratorium on short-term rentals. Thank you.
Thank you. Bila Barzayan, please press star 6. Your 90 seconds starts now.
Good afternoon, community members. My name is Bila Barzayan, and I'm also a student at Cal State Long Beach. I'm asking the committee to support the following recommendations by community members that were not included in the proposed recovery plan. They include the creation of a rental housing division, the full funding of the Right to Counsel program, and specific funding set aside for the creation of community land trusts in Long Beach. I also believe this committee and council must consider a moratorium on hosted and unhosted short-term rentals. Not only do we have to protect our housing stock, but we must also put vulnerable workers at first. As tourism comes back, allowing short-term rentals to operate will chip away at the vital sector's recovery, impacting the return of hotel workers on their jobs. The city of much-needed tax revenue. Don't let short-term rentals operate until hotels can rehire their workers back in. Let's not let this moment take bold action. To take bold action pass us by. Consider the above requests and please recommend a moratorium on short-term rentals. Thank you.
Thank you. Calvin Brumbaugh, please press star 6. Your 90 seconds begins now.
Good afternoon, community members. My name is Calvin, and I am a Long Beach resident. I live in District 3. I'm asking the committee to support the following recommendations by community members that were not included in the proposed recovery plan. They include the creation of a rental housing division, the full funding of the Right to Counsel program, and specific funding set aside for the creation of community land trust in Long Beach. I also believe the committee and council must consider a moratorium on hosted/unhosted short-term rentals. Not only do we have to protect our housing stock, but we must also put vulnerable workers first. As tourism comes back, allowing short-term rentals to operate will chip away at this vital sector's recovery, impacting the return of hotel workers to their jobs and the city of much-needed tax revenue. Do not let short-term rentals operate until hotels can rehire their workers back in earnest. Let's not let this moment to take bold action pass us by. Consider the above requests and recommend a moratorium on short-term rentals. Thank you.
Thank you. Chelsea Velez, please press star 6. Your 90 seconds begins now.
Hi everyone. My name is Chelsea Velez, and I'm also a student at Cal State Long Beach. So today I'm asking the committee to support the following recommendations that were not included in the proposed recovery plan. They include the creation of a rental housing division, the full funding of the Right to Counsel program, and funding set aside for the creation of the Community Land Trust in Long Beach. I also believe this committee and council must consider a moratorium on hosted and unhosted short-term rentals. We need to protect both our housing stock and vulnerable workers. As tourism comes back, allowing short-term rentals to operate will chip away at this sector's recovery, impacting the return of hotel workers to their jobs and the city of much-needed tax revenue. Don't let short-term rentals operate until hotels can rehire their workers back. Thank you.
Thank you. Harriet Ellis, please press star 6. Your 90 seconds starts now. Harriet Ellis, please press star 6. Your 90 seconds starts now. Harriet, we'll come back to you. Heather Kirksey, please press star 6. Your 90 seconds starts now.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Heather. I'm a Long Beach resident in District 2. I'm also a Cal State Long Beach student. I am asking the committee to support the following recommendations by the community members that were not included in the proposed recovery plan. They include the creation of rental housing division, the fully funding of the right to counsel program, and specific funding set aside for creation of the community land trust in Long Beach. I also believe this community council should consider a moratorium on the hosted and unhosted short-term rentals. Not only do we have to protect our housing stock, we must also put vulnerable workers first. As tourism comes back, allowing short-term rentals to operate will chip away at this vital sector's recovery, impacting the return of the hotel workers to their jobs and the city of much needed tax revenue. Please consider the request and recommended moratorium on the short-term rentals. Thank you.
Thank you. James Swazo, please press *6. Your 90 seconds starts now. Hi, James. Your 90 seconds starts now.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
All right. Good afternoon, members of the Federal Legislation Committee. My name is James Swazo, and I'm a 3rd District resident and Executive Director of Long Beach Forward. I'm speaking in support of including community-driven solutions into the Recovery Act, including specific allocations for a rental housing division, a right to counsel program, and community land trust. I'm happy to see that language access and equity are included in the proposed plan and ask that the intentions be met with line items to ensure that language access resources are prioritized just as other efforts are moving forward and as we move into the budget process. Mayor Garcia's additional announcement of a new $12 million is welcome news. A wise person once said, "Mo money, mo problems," and thankfully your community is here to work with you and offer tangible solutions to allocate these resources and address the needs of those who are directly impacted by this public health crisis. I encourage you to continue to prioritize Black residents, undocumented residents, renters, and low-income families in this plan. Thank you.
Harriet Ellis, please press *6. Your 90 seconds begins now.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Harriet Ellis. I'm a member of Temple Israel Social Action Committee. We're in District 3, Long Beach. I also represent hundreds of faith leaders connected through CLU, Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. I'm asking the committee to support the following recommendations that were not included in the city's proposed recovery plan. Among them are $700,000 for a rental housing division, additional funding for the right to counsel program, and specific institutionalized funding for staff and outreach to help with more effective implementation of Long Beach's language access programs. Many hospitality workers lost their jobs and health insurance because of COVID-19. We must put these vulnerable workers first in our recovery plan. Generally, they're the first greeters for visitors to our beautiful city. As tourism comes back, allowing short-term rentals to operate, this will chip away at this vital sector's recovery, impacting the return of hotel workers to their jobs and the city of much-needed tax revenue. Don't let short-term rentals operate until the hotels can rehire their workers back in earnest. As people of faith, we believe we are our siblings' keepers and responsible for the well-being of the vulnerable. Now is the time to take bold action. So I urge you to consider these requests and recommend a moratorium on short-term rentals. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamalette Ochoa, please press *6. Your 90 seconds starts now.
My name is Jamalette Ochoa, and I'm a community organizer with the Long Beach Immigrants' Rights Coalition. I'm here to advocate for that the city supports the Equitable Long Beach Recovery Act and gives funding to the following community asks. But before I get there, I want to say one of my most favorite quotes. The safest communities don't have the most police surveillance, but the most resources. Language access accessibility, I cannot emphasize this enough, is important for the city to have enough staff to give accurate, clear information in languages other than English. The COVID hotline is still not working when we click the Spanish option. Agendas in this very same meetings and city council meetings are not in other languages than aren't in English. Long Beach cannot recover from COVID-19 if we continue to push non-English speakers to the side. Investing in language access will allow community members to get connected to the following ask. Rental and housing division and right to counsel. COVID has highlighted the long existing issue with housing inequities and community members that spend over $60,000 in their checks that are on rent and now are being evicted due to the economic hardship that COVID has caused. The city can make an impact by providing these essential resources. We're asking for basic needs. Now more than ever, the city needs to have a system in place to help build their constituents to survive this and recover. Funding for immigrant assistance. The immigrant community has been fighting COVID and trying to survive this pandemic with zero support. Many of our undocumented community members have lost their jobs, no access to healthcare, and cannot receive a stimulus package and still undergoing landlord harassment. This fund can prevent your constituents from reaching to the point of homelessness. Their parents worried about keeping them.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Katie Vergara. Your 90 seconds starts now. Please press *6.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Katia Vergara, and I am a Long Beach resident, and I live in District 8. I am asking the committee to support the following recommendations by community members that were not included in the proposed recovery plan. They include the creation of a rental housing division, the full funding of the Right to Counsel program, and specific funding set aside for the creation of community land trusts in Long Beach. I also believe this committee and council must consider a moratorium on hosted and unhosted short-term rentals. Not only do we have to protect our housing stock, but we must also put vulnerable workers first. As tourism comes back, allowing short-term rentals to operate will chip away at this vital sector's recovery, impacting the return of hotel workers to their jobs and the city of much-needed tax revenue. Don't let short-term rentals operate until hotels can rehire their workers back in earnest. Let's not let this moment to take bold action pass us by. Consider the above request and recommend a moratorium on short-term rentals. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Lopez, please press *6. Your 90 seconds begins now.
Honorable council members and community members, my name is Maria. I'm undocumented, unafraid, and unapologetic. I migrated to Long Beach at the age of 3, and now I'm the funder of Wella LBC, focusing on community-led solutions. I support the Long Beach Recovery Act and specifically community-led solutions such as the rental housing division with 5.5 full-time employees, the Right to Counsel program, a fully funded community land trust, and also language access with specifics of 2 full-time coordinators and 1 full-time assistant. Once again, I also support the Justice Fund, and we would hope to have increased funding by $300,000. And last but not least, a full fund immigrant assistance program of $2.5 million. As of now, the city has not taken any lead to support what was the Undocu Fund led by undocumented women and created by undocumented folks themselves to help our immigrant communities. And again, a full language access program with 2 full-time coordinators and 1 full-time assistant, as your Spanish line has been down in this meeting, earlier in the meeting. So I really do hope that you all focus and center on these community-led solutions. If you do not, your equity is not enough for our communities, and I encourage you to add them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mercy Solozano, please press *6. Your 90 seconds begin now.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Mercy Solorzano, and I am a Long Beach stakeholder. I'm also part of California State University Long Beach. I'm here today asking the committee to support the following recommendations by community members that were not included in the proposed recovery plan. These include the creation of a rental housing division, the full funding of the Right to Counsel program, and specific funding set aside for the creation of community land trust in Long Beach. I'm also really happy that this was actually added in, the Right to Counsel program, just because I've been in the situation of eviction along with my mother, and it was really hard to even find counsel. I also believe this committee and council must consider a moratorium on unhosted short-term rentals. Not only do we have to protect our housing stock, but we must also put vulnerable workers first. As tourism starts coming back in, allowing short-term rentals to operate will chip away at the sector's recovery, impacting the return of hotel workers to their jobs and the city of much-needed tax revenue. Don't let short-term rentals operate until hotels can rehire the workers back in earnest. Please consider the above request and recommend a moratorium on short-term rentals. Thank you.
Thank you. Steven Estrada, please press star 6. Your 90 seconds begins now.
Hello, my name is Steven Estrada. I'm a member of the local Communist Party USA here in Long Beach. I'm a resident in District 1. On a personal level, I'm a father, a renter, a U.S. Army veteran who served our country overseas, and I'm proud to be a part of this beautiful and diverse working class community that has unfortunately been overexploited and underserved by the very people who have been elected to represent it. As a member of this community and as a resident of District 1, a district in which close to 1 in 4 people live in poverty, we demand the recovery funds be utilized solely as a way to eliminate the glaring disparities between those in the city who have wealth and political power and those who do not. We demand the funding of a community land trust for affordable housing, the creation of a rental housing division, a right to counsel program for tenants in the city. We demand equality for working class people because it is working people that make the city run. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Suzanne Brown, please press star 6. Your 90 seconds begins now.
Good afternoon. My name is Suzanne Brown, and I'm a senior attorney with the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles. We submitted a letter along with our community partners that include our funding recommendations for the recovery dollars. We appreciate that some of our recommendations are included in the staff report, but we urge this committee and the full council to make adjustments to further address the community's needs. I will highlight a few of the missing items. First, we ask the city to create a rental housing division to act as a point of contact for both tenants and landlords. The housing landscape has become increasingly complex in light of the pandemic and the myriad of new housing laws, and we need the city to play a role in issuing bulletins, answering questions, and assisting those in need. The staff report refers to the creation of one new position in the Housing Services Bureau, but it does not allocate any clear funding for this position. We ask that $700,000 be allocated for the creation of a rental housing division in the city. Second, we ask the city to fully fund the Right to Counsel program. We anticipate an absolute tsunami of evictions as a result of the pandemic. We appreciate that $900,000 was allocated for this in the recovery plan, but a fully funded program would cost at least $3.6 million. This program is needed to prevent displacement of our most vulnerable residents of color. Third, we ask the city to allocate funds to create the first community land trust in the city. The staff report proposes $500,000 to study land trusts. Studying trusts is not a good use of money. We simply need funds to get this off the ground.
Thank you. James Marks, please press star 6. Your 90 seconds begins now.
Yes, I'd like to say that I hope that while we're in the process of allocating these funds to the different organizations that are in the community existing, that we don't forget about those marginalized communities and those that are really impacted, and that we don't just continue to do what we've done in the past. And that is, we'll just give the money to those organizations, and that those organizations will now become vetted by community according to their body of work and the credibility that they have from those members of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Timothy James, please press star 6. Your 90 seconds begins now. Timothy James, please press star 6. Your 90 seconds begins now. Victor Sanchez, please press star 6. Your 90 seconds begins now.
Hello, Vice Mayor, committee members, Victor Sanchez with the Long Beach Coalition for Good Jobs and a Healthy Community. I'm asking the committee to give extra consideration to the following items that need greater support as part of this recovery plan. And they include the establishment of a rental housing division that can protect renters and inform landlords, and to better implement the policies that this very council has passed. We also ask for the full funding of the Right to Counsel program to provide legal representation and resources to those most in need. We also ask for specific funding set aside to fund, not further study, community land trusts in Long Beach. It's time our city makes this happen. We also need to better support immigrants and hire staff to effectively implement your language access program. I also believe this committee and council must consider a moratorium on hosted and unhosted short-term rentals. Apart from directing these resources, we have to think about policy that puts workers first. As tourism comes back, allowing short-term rentals to operate will chip away at this vital sector's recovery. Hotels contribute to jobs. Short-term rentals do not. Don't let short-term rentals operate until hotels can rehire their workers back in earnest. Let's not let this moment pass us to take bold action. Thank you very much.
Timothy James, please press star 6. Your 90 seconds begins now.
Hi, committee members. Thank you for your time. My name is Timothy, and I'm a student at Cal State Long Beach. I'm here to advocate for a number of policy proposals that unfortunately did not make the COVID relief list. These include the creation of a rental housing division in Long Beach, a properly and fully funded Right to Counsel program, and finally, specific funding set aside for the formation of community land trusts in Long Beach. I'm also asking the committee and council to hold a moratorium on hosted and unhosted short-term rentals. It's critically important to make sure that our workers in the hospitality field, who have already had it so tough, are our priority. Allowing short-term rentals to persist as our tourism industry comes back will damage this sector's recovery, harming both hotel workers and Long Beach's tax stream. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak, and I hope these proposals are able to make it into law.
Thank you. Please give us a moment as we transition to our Spanish-speaking residents. Betty Ruiz, please press star 6. Your 30 minutes begins now.
Sí, buenas tardes. Yo soy miembro de la Coalición de Derechos de Inmigrantes de Long Beach. Y estoy aquí para abogar y exigir que den más dinero y apoyo al Fondo de Justicia para los Inmigrantes. También para una creación para la misma gente indocumentada. Ya que todos en general hemos visto y estamos viendo cómo la pandemia nos ha afectado a todos. Creo que los inmigrantes son afectados doblemente por no tener un apoyo económico del gobierno. El virus nos ha afectado a todos en general. Mucha gente perdió su trabajo. O mucha gente dejó de trabajar por varios meses.
Many people are stopped working for a long time. Sí, señora.
Sí, bueno.
Sí, permítame un segundo. Vamos a continuar. Permítame un segundo. Hello. My name is Beatriz Ruiz. I'm a member of the Coalition Immigrant and Language, and I'm here to fight for more money for the program of Justice for Immigrants. Also, to create a program for the same undocumented individuals, because we also see how the pandemic affected all of us. I believe the immigrants are being affected for not having economic support from the government. This virus is affecting us all in general. How many people are stop working for money for the longest time? Continúe, señora, por favor.
Especialmente la gente inmigrante batallan mucho para juntar dinero para la renta.
They cannot work and don't have money for rent.
Por eso pido un apoyo financiero para los inmigrantes.
Financial support for immigrants.
Porque hemos vivido en carne propia lo difícil que es no tener apoyo económico.
Difficult it is not to have economic support.
Para los gastos de alquiler.
Rent expenses.
Y sé que mucha gente está pasando por la misma situación.
Going through the same situation.
Ya que he visto familiares, amigos, vecinos que son inmigrantes tratando de sobrellevar esta situación.
They're trying to go through this situation.
Por eso estoy aquí para abogar por un apoyo de alquiler.
To fight for rental support.
Y un apoyo legal de asesoramiento para los indocumentados.
And legal support for undocumented.
Y para nuestra gente también que están en proceso de deportación. Por favor, detengamos eso. No separen a más familias. Gracias.
Do not separate all these families. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Gonzalez, please press star 6. Your 3 minutes begin now.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Hello. Good evening.
Mi nombre es Elizabeth
My name
González.
is Elizabeth Gonzalez.
Soy residente de la ciudad de Long Beach
I'm a Long Beach resident.
y parte de la coalición de los derechos de los
and part
inmigrantes.
of the Coalition of Immigrants' Rights.
Mi comentario es para apoyar el
My
Fondo de
comment is
Justicia y la creación de un
to
fondo de
support
asistencia
funds
para
to
los
creation
inmigrantes.
a fund of assistance for immigrants.
Se necesita que los inmigrantes tengan
We
ayuda
need that
legal
immigrants
gratuita,
have legal counseling,
evitar la deportación y evitar
avoid
la separación
deportation.
de familias,
and to avoid family separation,
evitar más contagios de COVID
to avoid more COVID contagious,
por estar en tiempo encerrados.
for being isolated more time,
Y crear un fondo de asistencia para los
and
inmigrantes
create a fund assistance for immigrants
serviría para ayudarlos con sus pagos de sus rentas.
would help them with their
La
rental
comuni-
payments.
La comunidad inmigrante no califica para las ayudas federales. Por ejemplo,
Immigration
unemployment,
status do not qualify for
estímulos, estampillas de comida,
financial assistance, stimulus, food assistance.
muchos inmigrantes que trabajaban en
immigrants
restaurantes,
They worked
en la limpieza,
in restaurants and cleaning.
han perdido sus trabajos
They lost their jobs.
y no han podido pagar sus rentas.
They haven't been able to pay their rents.
Muchos están siendo contagiados todavía del
Many
COVID,
have been contagious with COVID,
lo cual les ha impedido trabajar,
and therefore they cannot work,
poniéndolos en riesgo de desalojo.
being in risk of being evicted.
Necesitamos la ayuda para poder salir adelante
We need
y
assistance so we
recuperar
can go forward.
y recuperarnos poco a poco de lo que estamos viviendo.
From all these difficult times.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jose Quesada, please press star 6. Your 3 minutes begin now.
Presione estrella 6.
Buenas tardes, me dirijo a ustedes del comité
I'm speaking
con
with you,
mucho
members of the
respeto.
committee, with all respect.
Soy parte de la coalición de derechos del inmigrante de Long Beach.
Coalition of Immigrants' Rights of Long Beach.
Y estamos pidiendo por apoyo en fondos para el inmigrante.
For the immigrant.
Yo quiero reconocer el esfuerzo que todos ustedes han hecho. Y escuché la cantidad, 207 millones que va a recibir esta ciudad de Long Beach. Y me pone a pensar, yo como inmigrante,
as an immigrant,
hay mucho dinero destinado a obras donde no nos afectan a nosotros, no nos impacta como inmigrantes. Yo estoy ahorita siendo parte de esta situación que está pasando. Mi empleador cierra la compañía, no nos avisa con tiempo.
They don't tell us ahead of time.
Soy padre de 5 hijos.
I'm a father of 5 children.
Y somos los inmigrantes, la materia prima en este país, una de las más fuertes. Hablo de inmigrantes de diferentes nacionalidades y razas. Yo les pido que ustedes consideren.
I ask you that you consider
cuando yo les comparto el impacto que causa
the impact that is causing
a un padre de familia que pierde el trabajo
that lost his job
y que no hay un recurso para que tú les digas a tus hijos que todo va a estar bien por un tiempo. Todos sabemos,
we all know,
no importa,
it doesn't matter,
de qué nacionalidad eres, el impacto que esta situación ha traído a nuestras familias e hijos. En cuestión de la juventud que está desubicada con el temor, con el futuro que a ellos les depara. Yo consciente digo que esta situación que Long Beach tiene ahorita y en nuestro país se está afrontando con 2 situaciones, con temor o con amor hacia la humanidad.
Thank you. That concludes our public speakers.
Gracias, eso concluye nuestra sección.
All right, thank you. So before we move on, and we're gonna take a vote, I want to take a moment and just acknowledge why the residents continue to ask for language access services. It's clear that based on what I had a difficult time understanding, and I'm not a Spanish speaker, and I had a difficult time understanding what was said. And I can only imagine the frustration of the people who took time today to speak to our town hall. And I think it underscores the need to ensure that language access is funded and that it's quality. And so I'm gonna, ask staff to speak with Office of Equity or whoever, is coordinating interpreters and ensure that this doesn't happen again first. And then secondly, I'm going to make sure that this is represented when we speak at the council meeting on the 16th, that we make sure that we consider including some investments and some additional, because we're already making investments, some additional investments into language access to ensure that this doesn't happen again. That said, I'll go ahead and make a motion to receive and file the presentation. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Sorrow. Let's go ahead and have our roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Sorrow?
Aye.
Vice Chair Supernaw?
Aye.
Chair Richardson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, so we are a little behind on time, but I think it was good that we were able to go through that. We have 3 more items, and I'm not going to ask for any PowerPoint presentations, but brief staff reports, because I do want to make sure we respect the committee members' time. So let's go ahead and pull up item number 2, and we'll just do a brief verbal staff report on item number 2, please.
Item 2 is a recommendation to receive and file staff recommendations for 2021 federal legislative agenda and forward recommendations to council for adoption.
All right, let's have a brief staff report, verbal.
Thank you, Chair Richardson and committee members. Yes, for this item, we have before you our staff recommendations for this year's update to the federal legislative agenda. And over the fall months, we were working hand in hand with our departments to gather information about the departmental feedback and priorities for this year in terms of legislation and funding needs. And we met with the departments one-on-one also to discuss specific recommendations to the agenda. And so what you have before you is a combination of staff recommendations from departments as well as updates from council direction over the past year. And just very quickly across the sections, you'll see in economic development, one of the important updates and inclusion is around digital inclusion initiative items. In public safety, we added a number of different items as a follow-up to some of the work we did at the State Legislation Committee in partnership with our Long Beach Police Department, our Health Department, and following up with the Racial Equity and Reconciliation Report. We've also added a public health section, knowing that, of course, public health is a top priority, not only this year, but long-term, as one of only 3 city health departments in the state. We've added some items in sustainable and livable cities related to housing assistance, so following up in a lot of ways from what we just heard in the previous item. And we also have our COVID advocacy strategy, which you'll see now a lot of the items have been addressed through the American Rescue Plan, but we also have a top priority around infrastructure investments this coming year. So this is one of the things that's in the COVID advocacy strategy as well. That concludes my report.
Fantastic, thank you. This is routine, we do this every year. Our legislative agenda just allows for our lobbyist team and our city staff and all of us to be able to go and be nimble in terms of the negotiations that are happening on the floor. So we intentionally keep it broad, but we use this as an opportunity to uplift the things we think should be represented in here. And I've read through the agenda. I support these changes. I'm happy to move forward with this. I want to invite Vice Chair Supernaw if you have any comments.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to thank Tyler Curley for bringing me up to speed on all this, because I'm a new member, and that was very helpful to understand the process. So thank you for that. And so I'm able to make the motion. We're good.
Absolutely, we will accept that motion. Councilmember Sorrow?
I just want to reiterate my thanks as well. There's been a lot of items that's come through in a very short time, and I appreciate the summary, and I second it.
All right, fantastic. Been moved in second. Is there any public comment on this item?
No public comment, Chair.
Thank you. Let's go ahead to our roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Sorrow?
Aye.
Vice Chair Supernaw?
Aye.
Chair Richardson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Number 3, please.
Item 3 is a recommendation to review and consider a resolution in support of H.R. 1384 and forward the recommendation to City Council for adoption.
All right, let's have a brief staff report, verbal.
Absolutely. So this was originally a council item in December to bring this item to the Federal Legislation Committee to have the city attorney draft a resolution in support of Medicare for all. I will say last year we wrote a letter in support of the legislation as well. So this would be to follow up and have the city attorney draft a resolution in support of Medicare for All.
Fantastic. And we certainly supported this unanimously at City Council, and I think it does belong here within our committee. So I'm happy to make the motion to support this. Is there a second?
Sure, Super can second.
Thank you, Council Member. Is there any public comment on number 3?
No public comment, Chair.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Sorrow?
Aye.
Vice Chair Supernaw?
Aye.
Chair Richardson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Fantastic. Our final item, number 4, please.
Item 4 is a recommendation to review and consider support for legislative proposals and forward recommendation to council for adoption.
All right, brief staff report here.
Yes, thank you.
High level, because I know it references a number of bills here.
Yes, absolutely. So we have 4 bills in front of you for consideration to support and send that recommendation to City Council. The first is for the American Rescue Plan Act, which I'm sure you're very familiar with now, which is the foundation for our recovery plan, but it also does a lot more. It's about a $1.9 trillion relief package for individuals, businesses, state and local governments, and more. So there's a lot in there. I'd be happy to provide additional details if interested. The second bill is the Equality Act, which would essentially bestow equal constitutional rights to the LGBTQ community. This would propose to prohibit discrimination based on sex, including gender identity and sexual orientation. The third bill is the U.S. Citizenship Act. So this is the Biden administration's comprehensive immigration reform bill. This would introduce an 8-year pathway to citizenship for undocumented individuals, including a 3-year pathway for undocumented individuals who entered the country as children, otherwise known as Dreamers. And it also does a number of things to reduce barriers, wait times, and border separation for family-based immigration. And finally, the fourth bill in front of you is the For the People Act of 2021. And this would propose a number of provisions to expand voter eligibility, as well as implement automatic voter registration and allow same-day registration, much as we do here in California. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Okay, so those are 4 great bills. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay, so moved. Is that a second, Council Member Sorrow?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Is there any public comment on item 4?
No public comment, Chair.
Okay, we'll have a roll call vote now.
Councilwoman Sorrow?
Aye.
Vice Chair Supernaw?
Aye.
Chair Richardson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, so that satisfies the agenda. We do have a second public comment period. Before we do that, I want to take some privilege. This is our first committee meeting of the new Fed-Ledge Committee. And Councilman Supernaw, I don't believe we've ever served on a committee together, and I'm looking forward to working with you these next 2 years. Absolutely. And Councilmember Sorrow, welcome to this committee. I used to chair this committee the first 2 years I was in office. It's a great committee. You're able to really learn firsthand about a lot of the federal dynamics that impact what we do. A lot of the work that came out of this committee before was like My Brother's Keeper came out of Fed-Ledge Committee. The PATH program came out of the Fed-Ledge Committee. A lot of this work is incredibly important. After we get done with this meeting, we're gonna need to get laser focused on the next big bill coming out of Washington, which will be the infrastructure package. The infrastructure package will be another reconciliation bill. Reconciliation is when one party can pass it. If you have a majority, you can only do it twice every 2 years, so twice every session. And so the first one was this big stimulus package, the American Rescue Plan. The next will be infrastructure. Major effort. We need to make sure there's flexible funding to local governments to build our community centers, our parks, our streets, our sidewalks. This is a big deal. So I look forward to working with both of you on this committee. And I think we're going to be able to deliver the way we're delivering for the rescue plan. we're gonna do a good job in delivering for our infrastructure stimulus, putting people to work. So I look forward to working with all of you. Did you want to add any comments before we go to public comment and close out?
I just want to add that I am also looking forward to working with the both of you, as since this is my first time in office, my first really 3 months. I'm looking forward to being, working in a committee, and especially the Fed-Ledge committee. So thank you so much. Appreciate your leadership, Vice Mayor Richardson, and look forward to working with you, Councilmember Supernaw, in this committee as well.
Absolutely. Councilmember Supernaw?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my sentiments exactly. And for Suli Saro, you're thrown right in right off the bat. So there you go. So, but I'm very confident you're certainly up to the task, and as is our chair. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you both. Okay, so let's go ahead. Do we have any final public comment? Members of the public are invited to address our committee.
No public comment, Chair.
Fantastic. Well, our Fed-Ledge committee is adjourned, and I'm going to keep the conversation. My office is hosting another webinar on the federal recovery and the regional recovery at 5 o'clock. It's called Civic Talks, and that's on my social channels. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great day. Take care.